Welcome in. This is Chart Anatomy 101 with Cheyenne. I'm your host here at Your Astro. Our goal is to teach you to learn the language of astrology so that you can spend your entire life on this journey with us rather than relying on someone else's interpretation of your experience. Today we're going to learn the anatomy of the chart. Why was the chart created the way that it was, and what has that got to do with me, right? For the class structure, we're actually going to take a chart. It's a random person's chart just so that we can use to flesh out and understand it. And we're going to blank it out and discuss each part of the chart as we fill it back in. It's as if you are casting a chart yourself. It's making sense. I feel it. Now, you've got two worksheets in front of you. One of them is coming from a scientific perspective, and the other is going to be the spiritual meaning that we assigned to each of these chart parts. Yeah, okay. What even is astrology? Astrology is the study of the stars from the perspective here on Earth. Everything that sets the tone for astrology are the stars around us, aka constellations, which is a group of stars. There are a few specific ones that we're going to take a look at. Okay, our solar system, as you may know, exists on what's called an ecliptic plane. It's basically the rough range around which most of our planets in our solar system go. We're moving, but we all have pretty much the same plane that we are around the sun. On this ecliptic plane, there is what's called the zodiac. It's a group of 12 constellations that exist, like how I said, around the same plane. So as planets move throughout their different cycles, they're going to appear to pass in front of one constellation or another. We call that the zodiac. Zodiac actually means little circle of animals. Most of the zodiac constellations are corresponding to animals or myths. We know that the actual solar system is heliocentric. However, astrology is the study from a geocentric perspective because that's where you live your life, on the Earth. And so from our perspective, it looks like the sun is traveling. How I talked about in front of those different constellations, we can see the little GIF here as we are moving counterclockwise, as almost all of our planets do in our solar system, around the sun. It seems like the sun is moving through the signs. Yes, the sun is the one that leads the charge. It's the biggest thing in our sky. So whenever we're looking at it, it looks like the sun moves through a different sign each month. And that's what you probably know as your zodiac sign, aka star sign, aka sun sign, right? Because the sun's a star. That's where we got what's called a zodiac season. Like someone can come up to you and say, hey, what day were you born? You can say April 11th, and we'll say, oh my God, you're an Aries, me too. But in actuality, all of the constellations are of a different size. If you take a look at Aries right here compared to Pisces, bro, you cannot tell me that the sun appears to pass in front of Aries for the exact same length as it does from Pisces right before it. Like, I'm looking, what the fuck is this? So why? The 12 zodiacs are given equal size, measure, weight, etc. in astrology because it's only a rough estimation of Aries season versus Pisces season. It's more so to do with the yearly changes that we have here on Earth, and those changes being literally our seasons. We've got 4 basic seasons in the Northern Hemisphere where astrology was developed. Those seasons are delineated by what are called solstices and equinoxes. As the Earth is moving through its annual revolution, it reaches a point, and that creates either the longest day or the longest night. The longest night that we have is actually the winter solstice. That's the official start of winter. Although, you know that we're feeling the temperatures rise and fall a lot sooner than that. That represents the turning point. We've had the longest night, and so now light will gradually increase until eventually we reach our equinoxes. We have both equal day and night. And then that represents another shift where we'll have increasing day from now on. For example, that gives us our seasons, again marked by spring equinox, summer solstice, autumnal equinox, and the winter solstice. Basically, every season represents the rise and fall of energy. As we enter into spring, we know that we've reached that halfway point, it's the equinox, and light is increasing so that in the vegetative cycle, we are able to have more growth happening with the more light we are able to get. And then from there, we have peak light in the summer. It gradually tapers off as we move through to another equal day and night, and then we're having more nighttime after that until we reach its peak, and so on and so forth. Seasons, spiritually speaking, can represent different aspects of the human life cycle. For example, spring is a time of birth and renewal. We were talking about seedlings being able to be started, so that represents birth and childhood. Now, summer is peak energies. That's young adulthood. You've got not only the energy, but awareness and autonomy so that you can utilize that energy to your fullest potential. In fall, it can represent middle age. Fall is a time whenever we are consolidating everything and taking stock of what you were able to do with your spring and summer energy and how well that fruited for you, whether or not you need to make hard choices for the winter. If you did a good enough job to hold you through, that can represent middle age, where people typically take stock. They have their midlife crisis, understand whether or not they were able to use their energy in a way that fulfilled them or not. And there's still time for them to decide to go on a different path. Fall is not the end of the growing season. Like, you can actually grow some stuff during fall too. But if you think about the way that it emulates life, something to keep in mind. And then winter. There's not a lot of room for fresh growth. At this point, everything has settled down. Things are going into hibernation. Things are winding down. They're resting. And it's a time for due rest. Therefore, winter can represent your elderly age or even death. It's a natural part of the cycle where anything that dies is then broken down, taken back into the soil to be recombined with the collective again in one form or another. I think that that's beautiful. The sky, how we said, it's split into 4 parts with 4 different seasons. Each season also has a distinct beginning, middle, and an end. Now, the beginning is marked by, again, either a solstice or an equinox. It represents that initiatory energy where things have now shifted fully and we're able to do something with that, embody the spirit of the new season. In the middle, everything has reached kind of an equilibrium, very steady and well established into whatever season it may be. Now, the end of the season is whenever things start to shift. You start to feel the change from spring to summer. You may start to feel the change from summer to fall with a cool breeze and leaves starting to change color. Now, it's not exactly the official start, but the changes have begun to set in. So if we divide 4 seasons by 3, what do we get? We get 12. That's why we have 12 seasons. If you were to look out into the night sky, even though Aries is very small, okay, we've established that, you would see that at the spring equinox, the sun is pretty much in Aries. It aligns, but it is not exact. It's more of like a calculated thing. You wouldn't be able to look out into the night sky and literally see the sun in Aries for the entirety of Aries season. Cool. I feel like you're getting it. Frequently asked questions. What about cusp? I'm a cusp baby. I love cusps. You're not a cusp. I'm sorry, you're not a cusp. That don't exist. It's actually a mathematical calculation. There is no gray area. You are either one or the other. And unfortunately, that is literally just math. We've got a 360 circle, 360 no scope, 12 signs. 360 divided by 12. Yes, it's 30 degrees. So you're either 29 and some change or you're 0 into the next sign. Sorry to tell you, you are a Gemini. Now, modality, spiritually, what does that mean? Modality is what we were talking about earlier, that distinct beginning, middle, or end of said season. Modality really tells you about how a sign likes to express itself, their sense of their drive. Every sign that shares a modality shares similarities across seasons, and that differentiates itself from its zodiacal neighbors. I'm not like the one who's very steadfast in his season, and I'm not really like the one who's all laissez-faire, go with the flow. Like, I've got my plan, and I'm gonna initiate, and I'm gonna do my thing, because I'm a cardinal sign. I'm different. I'm different to my neighbors, but I share a mode of operation with people further away from me, aka the similar modality. Let's talk about cardinal signs. Cardinal signs are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. All of these signs are the beginning of their respective seasons. Spiritually, these signs represent go-getter energy because the groundwork has been laid from the previous shifting energies, and now we've reached the official start of their season, and they say, okay, well, everything's laid out for me, may as well just go and get after it. And they do. It's an energy that is known to incite action. At this point, we've talked about it, we've did about it, not going to just talk about it, but be about it. That's Cardinals. Cardinal signs are really leaders. They're someone good to have in your corner. Their strengths are initiating change, are being determined, are being a little self-centered, and not really having the staying power, but they would be a great boss, because we all know that bosses just like to know exactly what they want and do something about it, but not really stay around to see the final product. Okay, baby, just get a chair next to me. I'm sorry, my cat. She's always got something to say, so I'm putting a chair here for her. Okay, fixed energy. Why do you go there? I gave you a chair. Fixed signs include Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. All of these signs are, again, whenever the season is fully established. These signs are really, really steady, and they have an equilibrium about them. They're really known to think about the future, think about long-term goals, have a very steady way of thinking, and they're not easily swayed one way or another. You will never, I think, meet a fixed sign who doesn't have an opinion and who isn't very acutely aware of their comfort zone. They like to be where they like to be, and that's just how it's gonna be. Now, finally, we also have mutable signs. Mutable signs include Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. As the season begins to taper off, wrap up, do its thing, the energy starts to coalesce into something new, melding what came before and what is to come next. And it's in this liminal kind of space that energy starts to radically shift, and it becomes this intangible sort of cloud of energy that you can't really pin down. Signs with this modality are really known for being go with the flow, a little bit more adaptable, very quick actually, because of that adaptation, the ability to see things from multiple angles. Like, signs here often get pinned for, Gemini is the most famous of them all, but for being two-faced, but really it's the aspect of being really able to see and shift and move between things. Like, I'm a Virgo, okay? So I'm a little bit partial to this modality, but I do think that it's an important one to have, because these people can always be thinking and ready for something new. So understanding the basic inherent energy of any singular sign could be made easier by looking at not only its season, think about the part of life that represents, but also its modality and its mode of operation. If it's going to be a pioneer, if it's going to be maybe not so adventurous, or if it's going to be creative and adaptable. Combine those things and you can get the basic energy of any one sign. Say, for example, you've got the middle of spring, well-established spring. It's a time of growth and a time of harmony. You would be able to understand what is actually Taurus season. On the reverse, if someone identifies Leo as a sign that really basks in expressing oneself, you'll be able to think about how summer is a time of true abundance. Young adulthood is a time for finding yourself. Fixed signs are really self-assured and unrelenting. And so having a sign that is unrelenting about expressing itself, yeah, okay, that sounds like Leo to me, aka middle of summer. Cream, what's happening? Now is the time that we can fill out our zodiac around the entire thing. Keep in mind, it's a counterclockwise universe out there. Let's look a little bit more into the chart called houses. What are houses? Houses you can basically think of as a way of keeping time, because it was originally developed to keep track of the sun's rise and set. It's become a really integral part of astrology over the years. It's something that I'm really partial to, and it is very time sensitive, right? Because it has to do with literally a single day. Houses are actually a calculated thing. They are a theoretical point in space, and it's determined by your position on the Earth's face, and basically like the horizon and meridian lines of where you're at. Say, for example, that's you right there in the middle. You'd be able to see the horizon line as represented in your chart. The up and down one would be your meridian line. Straight above you would be exactly where high noon is. That's how they became relevant and important in astrology. How location really impacts the way that your houses are going to be set up. Like how I said, the horizon and the meridian lines, they're going to look different depending on where you are in the world. You can see, accounting for different time zones, these are literally the exact same time, but the charts look different. Where the sun falls in the house is different. It's going to have a profound impact on the chart, and this is only showing with one planet on here. So pretty important. Timing also really impacts it. Like how I said, it's a representation of an entire day with the sun's path. It goes pretty quickly. Your rising sign will change signs every 2 hours compared to your sun, which changes signs every 28 30 days. Like, that's different. Okay, very, very time sensitive. Spiritually, however, this isn't a representation of the sun's path and the waning light throughout the day. Okay, it's actually a representation of the soul's journey throughout its life. Like how we were able to reference different seasons, that's kind of on a broad scale. This is a more internal matter of learning that you have a body, learning how to take possession of your immediate surroundings, learning how to communicate about that, learning about your home, learning about how to interact with your peers, and then learning how to interact in a personal relationship. Like all of those internal journeys with you, yourself, and different aspects of human life. That's really where it's going to come into play with houses. It goes all the way from birth at the ascendant point. The ascendant is literally the exact moment that you came on to, the exact moment that you burst into the world, birth. And so that sets off your entire first house and therefore influences the rest of your chart. Birth at the ascendant in the first house, all the way back around to boom, death or rebirth in the 12th house, however you choose to see it. Right? So a good thing to help you keep track of symbolism with houses is the fact that we assign meaning to the sun's light in a couple related but distinct ways. Symbolically speaking, the sun's rays represent shedding light on something, and that could be giving life, recognition, understanding what is illuminated by the sun's light. It's easy to see, plain to see, clear, and people recognize it. Okay, so whenever we apply that to the birth chart, we're gonna see that any parts on the top, right? If this is the zenith point, aka high noon, where the sun is at peak visibility, we see that above the horizon line is day in a chart. Below the horizon line, things that are untouched by the sun's light will be hidden or personal or just generally unseen by the world at large. This is gonna be more of like your private life and internal working. Whereas things over on the top half of that chart, those are going to be basically on a public stage. And whenever it's on a public stage, it's available for scrutiny and praise all the same. Houses represent different aspects of the human life, the transitions we go through as we grow into ourselves and learn to understand who we are and our growth, not only in relation to time, but others. Because you can get old and not be wise. You can be wise and not be old. Like, for example, we can look at a specific part of the chart. Available for scrutiny is all on the top and kind of hidden away all on the bottom. That's more internal. And then we've got external up here. If we were to go to the 7th house, boom, right there, we see the turning point where people focus less on the ego, less on the internal self, focusing on me. And it's the first time that they consider, well, what about you? You're really learning to differentiate between me and you. And the way to do that is basically like you're exploring the bounds of yourself through direct relation to another single human being. And common themes for this house include partnership, marriage, and rivals. All of these actually do have things in common in the fact that it's you versus the other. It could be that you are inviting energy that you feel subconsciously or consciously that you are lacking. For example, I'm not really good at math. I love to speak, I love to write, I love to communicate verbally, but whenever it comes to math, I unconsciously found someone, and my husband is like a super big math whiz, but he actually doesn't feel that comfortable speaking on camera. We invite the energy of the other, feel like a stronger whole together. But these are also things that you may not find comfortable spending time with the energy of another person, and that would be an open enemy. You say, well, I'm not like her. I'm not selfish, and she pisses me off because she is. You know what? You may be selfish, and that's okay. That's what Carl Jung, who is a famed psychologist and an astrologer, he coined the term shadow self. It's something that you see in another person that reminds you of what you push down within yourself because you have shame about it, and therefore you project and you say, well, that's horrible. That's the worst thing you could ever be. That person's literally just living, but you're the one hating. I don't see how you hate from outside. But you can't get in. It's either you're comfortable with the energy and you want to invite it in, or you're uncomfortable with the energy and you would rather see it die. Cool how different ends of the same ideal can exist within a singular house. And that's why whenever people try to predict with astrology, I find that tenuous. I find that skeptical. I find it nearly impossible because it's an archetypal understanding, and I don't know why you think that you can just say, oh, for sure it means X, Y, Z. There's no for sure in astrology anywhere. It's an art, it's a creativity, it's a way that you can use to understand, but it would never be concrete. It would never be concrete. So if someone tells you that they can predict your future from your astrology chart, they're lying. They are lying. He's lying. He's lying. Sorry about that. Yeah, it's about reflection. And if you're comfortable with that reflection, or if you ain't, projection, the shadow self, and balance all exist within the 7th house. Now's the time we're going to fill in common associations for the houses. If you want to learn more, check out the series that I have on houses, and a link to that is on my website just for basics. We've got a couple keywords, fill them in now. We went to the far reaches of space and we were here on the surface of the earth. Now, in between are the planets, the other bodies in our solar system. Planet actually goes back to ancient Greek, literally wanderer. It's derived from planetsai, which is a Greek verb, which means to wander. So that's to distinguish that from the stars and things that weren't stars, which are planets, moving bodies. Pretty cool. From here on out, planet refers to any moving body, and that includes what are called the luminaries, aka the sun and the moon. They illuminate both our day and our night. There are other categories within the planets. This is moving in to out. They move slower the further out that you get from the sun. Mercury, Venus, and Mars are all considered personal planets. And then we've got Jupiter and Saturn. These are the last planets that are actually in traditional astrology because these are the furthest out that we can see with the naked eye. They move much slower, therefore are going to fall in the same sign for large groups of people. And then even more so, as technology advanced, we were able to see even further Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
Heard about Pluto? It's messed up, right?
These take the longest. I think Pluto takes 218 years to move its full cycle. Hello? That's crazy. And that's my point, is that no person is going to experience a Pluto return, which would be whenever a planet returns back to the same part that it was in your chart. Your birthday is a solar return. It's where the sun was exactly at the time of your birth, and now it's there again. Basically, these 10 planets, these 10 moving bodies, are what's tracked in a standard chart. What about retrogrades? What about retrogrades? I've heard about retrogrades. What's a retrograde? It's Mercury and Gatorade? You're so funny and hilarious and original. Planets actually move at varying speeds, and whenever that happens, picture you're moving on a bend and you're slow. Your friend Mercury, super fast. Fucking Usain Bolt, Lightning McQueen. If you were literally to just stand still and watch him run laps, you would say, well, he's moving this way. It looks like he's moving to the right, but then why is he moving left? He's not just going around the bend, and it looks like he's been moving the exact same way the whole time. Basically how retrogrades work is that you see someone going around the bend quicker than you, and it looks for a second like they're going left instead of right. Cool. It's observed from Earth because geocentric practice, whatever. That's how it appears. We know that it's not actually what's happening, but in a spiritual sense, whenever things seem to be moving backwards, it shows an inversion of the qualities that this planet might possess, or a time for reflection. Really taking time to analyze what this planet represents before you act on it. How we say Mercury's in retrograde. Mercury is a planet of communication and technology and community, and so it's things that are ever present in today's society. So if we say Mercury's in retrograde, you gotta slow up, you gotta slow down, that's because you have to watch the way that you communicate, analyze your relationships, and if they're going to come back, like say an ex or an ex-friend coming back into your life, or your computer's gonna crash and you're gonna lose all your work because all of those qualities are getting turned on their head. They're moving backwards. And if you were to just take a pause and say, hey, things are gonna operate the way that they normally do, and that's chill, and I'm cool, and I'm with it, then you're gonna have a better time. And that's why people say to pay attention to whenever Mercury is in Gatorade. Don't fucking piss me off. So planets, again, astrology, archetypal understanding of the world around us, represent different parts of your self. Your internal world can be reflected by like the myths that we had in Greek society. I'm sorry, I have my cat. I'll show you him so I don't just look crazy. That's my cat. I'm petting him. So each of the planets are actually named after myths. Don't know if you knew that. Myths of the Hellenistic period. So like Greek, Roman, whatever. But they chose Roman names, which is odd to me, but fine. And you can understand a little bit about what the planet might represent as far as a different aspect of yourself by understanding the myth from which it originated. So you can look to Venus, aka Aphrodite, for the way that you love, or Mercury, aka Hermes, for the way that you communicate. It's really good for you to better understand the function every planet has in your chart. Now, we've also got other ways that myth impacts our everyday life, like it's a zeitgeist. It didn't carry just a lot of weight back then, but it even still influences the way that we communicate now. Like, for example, lunatic. We all know what that means. Luna, lunar, lunation. It's Latin, and it comes from the moon, and the moon is a planet that moves very quickly, that's associated with the tides and with spirituality, emotionality, connection, and erratic movement. So lunatic is someone who's acting all crazy around the time of the full moon, usually. Like, that's where it came from, is because people were being weird around the full moon, and then it's like wolves, werewolves and stuff, you know? And other words that are part of it are venerate, mercurial, jovial, martial, their definitions. And then I really want you to try to match those up with what planet do you think that that originates from? And what do you think that that says about that planet? Critical thinking skills, yes, 101. At this time, we're gonna fill in the planets. We will have practice with drawing their symbols. And then also, as we do that, let's go ahead and make a note about what generally they represent. The sun represents your ego, the moon being emotion, Mercury with your intellect, Venus touches on your sexuality. Okay, don't touch on. Anyway, Mars represents your passion, Jupiter, curiosity, the drive to understand, Saturn, discipline, Uranus handles innovation, Neptune deals with illusions, and Pluto is transformational energy and inner depths. Once those planets have been charted onto the chart, you'll see that some are closer to others and some are farther away, and the degrees of separation is something in and of itself in astrology. Spacing that you see really speaks to the style of relationship that these planets are going to have with one another, be it harmonious or tenuous, helpful or destructive. The planets' relationships, the degrees of separation from one another, these are called aspects. And there's a lot of different aspects, but we're going to cover the basic ones that were used in ancient astrology. Aspects actually have a range given to them. Orbs, say for example, there's an aspect known as an opposition. It's 180 degrees away from each other. But if it's like 179 or like 184, that would still be considered an opposition. But the thing to keep in mind is that orbs vary by the person, by the practice, by the planet involved, a little bit up to interpretation, how strict you want to be, how strict of a program you're running. But truly, it's always going to be more impactful, carry more weight if it is an exact aspect. Like we said, 180, if it's 180, well, that's for sure. And that's strong, that's significant. But you can also be a little bit relaxed and say, well, within 10 degrees, I'll count it. Kind of crazy, but you can do it. Finally, we're going to talk about all the aspects that happen in a chart. Now, the first one that we will talk about is the easiest to identify. It's called a conjunction. It's whenever two planets are usually less than 10 degrees away from each other. An exact conjunction would be they're right on top of each other, 0 degrees away from each other. This is actually considered to be the only neutral aspect. It's ruled by Mercury, which is, again, planet of communication. Also has been considered like a hermaphroditic entity and planet. I don't know if that's like an outdated term. He's considered bi-planet. I don't know. I think of him as gender fluid. You know what I mean? He's a little bit cool with whoever he needs to be cool with because he rules over this aspect. It's like, I'm good, I can adapt. I got it. Don't worry. So whenever two planets are really close to one another, in general, these energies tend to blend and meld and become something entirely new. What else is like that? Right, exactly. Steven Universe, Garnet, we get it. we're on the same page. Creating something unique to your chart. Something also to note is that if you have more than one conjunction involved, that's very significant. It's called a stellium. Really amplifies the energy of the sign that all of these planets are in, conjuncting one another. It can really key you into understanding the energy of that sign. For example, I have a sister who is a Gemini stellium, aka she has a lot of planets very close together in the sign of Gemini in her chart. She's the most Gemini that's ever Gemini'd. Like very, 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 very Gemini. Hers, for example, is in her first house, so it primarily affects who she is as a person, impacts her personality and her skill set. She's incredibly gifted at working with her hands. Anytime that I need something worked on or analyzed or talked through, I got my resident Gemini expert, but it's just like you can fully embody the sign and the house that's involved with that. This is a really amazing aspect to have because it's easily identifiable and can be very impactful if more than 2 planets are involved. Typically they say 3 makes for a stellium, but regardless. The next is a sextile. Sextiles are about 60 degrees away from one another, and this usually means that they are in signs that share a polarity. Now, we didn't touch on polarity, but it's basically yin or yang, whether it is a yin receptive style of operation or yang an active style of operation. The way that these planets is very cool with each other. To me, it's kind of like if you guys go to the same school but you're not in the same clique, you know? It's like, oh, well, if I see you out in public, I'm not gonna leave you stranded. I know you, but I don't know you like that. It's very harmonious, but like not too serious about it. It's ruled by Venus. Venus is a planet of creativity, art, creation in all aspects. It also rules like childbearing and birthing of ideas. Venus is a loving, benevolent planet. And so this aspect is what's known as a benefic aspect. Typically good, always ease of flow. And it will depend on the players. If it's your innovation combining with your passion, aka Uranus with Mars, that could be experienced negatively because ease of energies feeding off of one another. You may have an innovative and possibly erratic way of expressing your passions and being angry, so you may have like explosive anger issues. Would people say that's a great thing? Probably not. But it's easy for you, I'll tell you that much. So a sextile basically reflects how 2 energies that may not be necessarily similarly motivated, but have the same kinship in the way that they operate, either active or passive. They can interact in a way that eases things along for one or the other. Like just no big deal. Not going out my way to do it, but it's always there. Next, we have squares. Squares are 90 degrees away from each other. Now, we actually kind of did touch on squares because squares are what happen whenever 2 signs share a modality. Squares are ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet of not only passion, but also aggression, cutting energy, war, hard choices, determination, things like that. Mars, if he's the planet of war, you know, it's not necessarily a good, easy time. So this is actually a malefic aspect, aka something that's going to show a little bit more strife and strenuous activity in the chart. We said they get the way the other operates, but that don't mean it's easy. They share the same modality. You would think that that would be good, but honestly, it's not. You can understand someone, but not really want to be involved close up with them. Say, for example, you're a leader of your respective season, and then you meet another leader. Y'all got respect between each other. Y'all are cool with each other, but not in the same room because, oh, we've already got a leader. You're good. You can step back. Why would I step back? I'm also a leader. What do you mean? What do you mean by that? Because I'm just as good at leading. And then we've got people getting under each other's skin, okay? Those planets are not really gonna vibe well with each other because I got it, bro. Back up. And it's just that back and forth. If it's initiatory energy, if it's 2 mutables, no, you got it. Don't worry. I'm cool with whatever. Like, no, actually, it's cool. It's like, no, don't worry. Well, like, whatever you want to do. Like, I don't even have any feelings or anything that I need, you know? It's just whatever you want. Whatever you want. We can't do all this, okay? Don't even get me started on 2 fixed signs. Girl, you are stubborn as hell. Ain't nothing moving forward. So There's tension. However, tension isn't always a bad thing. I mean, like sexual tension, but there's also the fact that tension, that friction can also throw a spark. So given like sufficient structure, if you were to work with this aspect and understand something that can be difficult, can be harnessed into creating something new, would be good. Right now, trines. Trines are 120 degrees away from one another. This is actually ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter is the benevolent ruler. Don't bring up Zeus right now. I can't handle it, okay? We're talking about Jupiter, which is his Roman counterpart. I mean, to be fair, Zeus was handing them out free and clear. Anybody who wanted some could get some, like human or otherwise. He was going crazy. There's that. But, you know, very big planet, big presence, the top dog, who is so secure in himself that he'll bestow whatever you want. You need help with it? I got it. You need something paid? Don't worry. You need some luck headed your way, Sagittarius? You're my favorite. Like, that's Jupiter. So whenever an aspect is influenced by Jupiter, ease, flowing energy, slipping and sliding easy. Planets here typically share an element. Elements represent kind of the way that signs understand the world, the lens through which they see it, you know? It could be emotional if you're a water sign, very practical if you're earth, analytical and dissecting if you are air, passionate if you're fire, that kind of thing. This means that planets that share an element have similar perspectives on life and perhaps similar views. The support that's felt here, now it's not, oh, we go to the same school, but we don't run with the same clique. It's like, no, we run with the same clique and we're on a mission. We're going to handle it together because if I help you, that helps me. Like, intrinsically tied to one another. You can think of trines as having two planets on the same team, fighting for the same goal, wishing for the other to move forward. That's like the only way that they can move forward themselves. Planets here are so harmonious to the point of complacency at times. I have a ton of trines in my chart. Oh my God, woe is me. I have so many trines. Everything works out easily for me. But it leads to complacency because it's just slipping and sliding. There ain't no friction. There ain't nothing going on. And so why would I need to work hard? That's the danger of trines. It helps because you need some ease somewhere. That's what a trine will give you. But don't really expect trines to make a person hardworking. That's not really it's not really the vibe. Good times, at least. Finally, we've got oppositions. Oppositions are what? Right, 180 degrees. They are opposite to one another. This is a aspect that's ruled by Saturn. Saturn is a planet that's really, really about teaching you patience and structure and the value of hard work. Yeah, Saturn is your granddaddy who understands that you live in the city, but he don't care and you need to learn how to muck out stalls. So, not sorry, you need to learn it, you know? It's a malefic aspect, not something that's easy. It's something that you are going to be learning a lesson through. Whenever Saturn is impacting an aspect, how it's felt, we can see two signs that see opposite ends of the same spectrum and need to learn from one another. Signs here, they share the exact same polarity, right? Yin and yang, modality, and are in compatible elements. So elements that ultimately do support one another. Earth and water with the plant, fire and air with being able to make a fire bigger. So these are harmonious in almost every aspect. But like how we said, if you share modality, I got it, you're good, back up. And then we see the same thing, we want the same thing, like Taurus and Scorpio. They exist on the same spectrum, the same axis of security. For Taurus, that's a tangible thing. They want to be physically secure. They want to feel empowered by their values. They want to be me in my own secure bubble. Whereas Scorpio is so outwardly focused. And they say, well, I want to feel secure by not needing any of that. I want to be above it. I want to be our money. Scorpio is very much about transformation, being beyond the security of the physical realm. It's security of spirituality, of knowing your place. How are these two people going to reconcile their beliefs? They're going to have to with an opposition. It's just, well, we both want the same thing. We just have different ways of going about it. And maybe I can be a little bit less focused on the tangible. And I can learn from you, Scorpio. And Scorpio will say, yeah, and maybe I can be a little bit more focused on what I need in my own physical demands, and learn from you, Taurus. And then they're so much better for it. Saturn also, he's related to the god of Kronos, and Kronos, chronological, having to do with time. It's something that is typically dealt with over the course of many years. If you were to work with an aspect or see your own chart with this aspect, it's going to be a slow, steady, maturing into understanding kind of thing. If you don't get it right away before the age of 12, okay, who cares? You're good. Once you reach maturity, it should come so much more easy. You're not feeling these polarizing beliefs anymore. You see the commonality come together. It's basically something that makes you so much more centered. Having two opposing beliefs see the merit in the other is very empowering and much more efficient and much more beneficial for you as a native and for people in general, like as a concept. So something that can be pretty good. All this to say that aspects that are considered malefic, bad and scary, and benefic, they're so loving and they like provide for you, that ain't gonna save you from the human experience at all. It's all just a way of describing where energy flows easily, harmoniously, and where it may require a little bit more work, require you to grow into understanding yourself or the world around you. It's just very imperative that you see both for exactly what they are. Neither group of aspects is going to either doom you to a life of misery or ensure that you can coast through it all. Like, every aspect has its positives and its negatives, and it's best to understand where you're going to be forced to learn and where you can choose to learn. Where it's in your chart can impact how deeply personal it could be, or if you're going through these things on a public stage, literally whatever it is, good or bad. Astrology as a way of understanding yourself so that you can really create an understanding with your journey of life. Sometimes astrology is a shortcut to, oh yeah, I'm a little bit sensitive about that. Oh yeah, no, you know what? I do have a good eye for design, and it is worth exploring. Like, take everything with a grain of salt, but give yourself the opportunity to even know what's on the table. That's what astrology can do, is that it can clue you in to certain archetypal behaviors, understanding of your whole experience on this rock. You know, you can see how you are more than your sun sign, because what the fuck, we barely talked about that. There's so much more in your chart. We can see how location and time and season and year, these things, they all move at different speeds. So that means last year's Pluto is never going to line up with Mars the same way that it did. It's always changing. There's an endless possibility for charts to be plotted here on Earth, and that's why there are endless amounts of personalities and experiences and things that can happen, because even within this, it's an archetypal understanding. So not one sign means one thing. And then you don't even just have one sign or one planet. You have 10 planets, 12 signs, more aspects, by the way. Didn't even touch those. Millions of places that you could have been born, 365 days that you could have been born, 24 hours within each day. That's a lot of math, and I'm not doing it, but it's a lot. It never repeats. And so you're supposed to be able to have a completely unique chart pretty much for the foreseeable ever. I hope that this was really genuinely helpful for you. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me, because I love to talk astrology. I really am happy that you took this step to learn more about yourself through the lens of astrology. It is an art, and it can never be replaced. So I hope you enjoy it, and let me know. Bye.